So far, the Giants offseason has consisted of bringing in a power right fielder who's from Northern California and now a lefty arm with Bay Area ties himself. But no, the Giants did not get Aaron Judge, and no, they did not yet, at least, sign Carlos Rodon. So Sean Manaea joins the Giants in addition to Mitch Haniger. We'll get into what it means and why fans are frustrated next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thanks for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Coming up on today's show, mailbag edition of the show, and the first questions are related to the fact that the Giants signed Sean Manaea last night, like I kind of mentioned there. Lefty arm, but it's not Carlos Rodon, and so we'll get into the signing as it relates to these questions. Dave says, what do you honestly think about the Manaea signing? Below the MLB average over the last 3 seasons with a 90 ERA plus, 100 is average, and third worst pitcher in baseball against the Dodgers last year with an 11.72 ERA against them. Seems like sort of a dumpster dive. Please be honest. And then Political Theory says, does Manaea mean the Giants are out on Rodon? It seems to me that Rodon should still be a main target, and having 6 starters is not a problem with Alex Wood in the bullpen or an injury. So, yeah, I did not have Manaea high on my list of guys for the Giants to target, mostly because of the season he had in 2022. As Dave correctly mentions, he did not have a good year, had a 4.96 ERA. I'm just citing numbers here before I get into opinion. If you look at 2018 through 2021, he had a 3.68 earned run average. And so my opinion is that if this is the Rodon replacement, it's not good enough. But there are a couple of factors going on here for me. Number one, I'm not at all convinced that they're done making additions to the starting rotation, because if you look at it, there's a lot of guys with injury concerns, including Alex Wood and Anthony DeSclafani, who literally ended the year on the injured list with DeSclafani had kind of major ankle surgery, and Wood had a shoulder impingement, and there's just, Cobb has an injury history. Manaea has had some injuries in his career as well. And so I don't see them going into the year with Webb, Cobb, DeSclafani, Wood, Manaea as that's it. And they've got Jacob Junis under contract as well. And this is the type of guy they've had a lot of success with. And so if they deserve the benefit of the doubt anywhere, it's with kind of reclamation starting pitchers. And so, again, I did not have him as a top target, but they have proven that they have a pretty good idea what they're doing when it comes to targeting starting pitchers. So I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt in some other areas, but if they deserve it anywhere, it's with reclamation project type pitchers. And again, it's December 12th, and we're going to get to a question about the fans being upset right now. But a big part of my response here is that it's December 12th. It's not April 12th. And so the offseason is not over, and there's a lot of arms left. Carlos Rodon is unsigned. Susan Slusser reporting that the Manaea signing does not take them out on Carlos Rodon. I just happen to think where Rodon's market appears headed, it would be a little foolish to think that the Giants are actually going to go there when it comes to the years, because they have seemed to want to shy away from even 5-year deals. In hindsight now, looking at Kevin Gausman's 5-year deal with the Blue Jays at a modest AAV, it looks like something they should have. A lot of people will say at the time, I said multiple times going into last offseason, I thought they would try to re-sign Gausman, and I thought that they would ultimately get him because he wanted to be here. And so I'm not saying we didn't know it at the time, but that looked like a good idea. I thought it was a good idea at the time, but now we're hearing Rodon wants 7 years minimum, and I'm not sure that that's a good idea, period. whereas 5 I think would be worth it. But if he really needs 7 or 8 years, it's just quite a lot to risk. But he's by far the best pitcher on the market. And so to answer Political Theory's question, does it take them out on Rodon? Susan Slusser says no, but I don't know exactly where she's getting that info. It could be Scott Boras related, and that they want the league. Boras wants the rest of the teams to think that the Giants are still involved. I seriously doubt that Manaea is the only starting pitcher that they add, and they've just had so much success. I just must point out, look at Kevin Gausman's numbers the year before he came to the Giants. Look at Alex Wood's numbers the year before he came to the Giants. Look at Anthony DeSclafani's numbers the year before he came to the Giants. And so Manaea's just kind of the next in line, in that he's not the same guy as these guys, but I mean, like I said, he was the ace of an Oakland A's staff that had some pretty good teams when he was at his best, and he's only 30 years old. And so I don't know, I would put money on him having a much better year in 2022. But it's not Aaron Judge, it's not Carlos Rodon, there's no doubt. So also from Dave, the next question. Dave says, this is the most negative I've heard the fan base. Please address and acknowledge this on your show today. I address it and I acknowledge it. People on Twitter are freaking out. I've never received so many questions for a mailbag episode. A lot of them are freaking out and negative, and is it time to panic? That kind of question. So yeah, and I understand it, like, because expectations were set high. We'd have to go back and find exactly what Farhan Zaidi and Larry Baer and Rob Dean have said exactly that set expectations up to a high level, but we expected them to make major moves, and so far they haven't. But again, it's December 12th. If this was April 12th, it would be different. If their offseason really is Sean Manaea and Mitch Haniger, then that's a super fair criticism to be quite upset with how the offseason went. But it's December 12th, and so I don't think it's time yet to go there. But I understand, like, if you want to do it through free agency, there aren't that many impact guys left. You've got Carlos Correa, who might even be the best free agent of them all this offseason. Yes, Aaron Judge better for now, but Correa being 3 years younger, 2.5 years younger, it could end up being like I don't know. He's not number one, but he's number two probably in terms of free agents, and he's still out there, and the Giants are still linked to him. So no, it's not time to panic there. And on, regarding starting pitchers, I just think they're going to continue to do more. And even if they miss on everybody, there's still trades. The negative with trades is that you have to give up young talent in return. Although there is also the possibility of perhaps you take on bad contracts in order to buy talent, which they've done in the past. And they were ready to spend a bunch of money. And so that would be one way to spend some money. So we'll continue to go through questions related to all these various topics, but I definitely address and acknowledge that the fans are upset, and I understand it, but at the end of the day, the offseason is not over, and there's still players out there, and I just seriously doubt that Manaea and Haniger are all they end up doing that are, their significant moves. So many more questions. I could run off these questions for like 2 weeks. You guys asked so many questions, so thank you. But many more coming up in just a minute. But before we get into them, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. And what I'm looking at today is actually the Carlos Correa odds, and we're going to get into Carlos Correa next. But when we last spoke of the Carlos Correa next team odds, the Giants and Twins were in a dead heat, and the other teams in the mix were the Cubs and Red Sox. But it's moved here, and the Giants are actually the slight favorites over all these other teams, ahead of the Twins at plus 110, which has implied odds of 47.6%. The Twins at plus 120, implied odds of 45.5. So almost a dead heat. And then now the Yankees have entered the mix here at plus 500, and those implied odds are 16.7%. So the betting market here at BetOnline views the Giants and Twins as kind of heavy favorites to land Carlos Correa. So no, not all hope is lost, but hey, they might not get him. But you can check this out and more at BetOnline, where it's the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, as promised, we are going to get into some more questions, specifically a lot of questions coming up about Carlos Correa. Thanks for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. So moving on with our questions, Joey Bart's season has kind of a long question about Carlos Correa, and we're going to hit on some of these points, and there's a lot of Correa questions. Joey Bart's season says, 1, would it really be such a good idea to get Correa? 28, chronic back issues and already has had major surgery, not a power hitter, which is what we need, not a great defender, never hit over 30 home runs in a year. 2, the cheating scandal. I personally don't mind, but players hate the guy. Could affect other free agent signings in the future of guys turning us down because they don't want to play with him. Correa isn't a big name that'll put butts in the seats like Judge would have. So I'm going to address these points right now. The age is definitely something. I mean, not the age, but the duration of a potential deal. These older players getting 11-year deals in Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts, and the fact that Correa is younger than them tells you he could get 12 plus years. And that, I hear you on that. That's a long time. Not a power hitter, which is what we need. I disagree. I kind of think teams view it, and I view it as like just overall offense and weighted runs created plus, even OPS plus is a better way than saying we need a power hitter. They just need good hitters, and he's one of the better hitters in baseball by these kind of better offensive metrics. Don't care that he's never hit 30 home runs in a year, although, I worry about towards the end of a contract, what is that going to look like? But in the next few years, he's going to be in his prime years for quite 4 or 5 more years. Players do not hate him at all. That's not true. I don't know where you're getting that. He was beloved by the Twins when he went to Minnesota. They desperately want him back in large part because of how great of a clubhouse guy and leader he was in Minnesota. They loved him in Houston. The Dodgers hate him. Maybe that's where you're getting this, but that's just not at all true. He has a good reputation. The cheating stuff, for sure. And there are some Dodgers guys on the Giants who were there in 2017 when the Astros were cheating. Alex Wood, Jock Peterson, Farhan Zaidi, Gabe Kapler were also in the Dodgers organization. But I think they recognize we'd rather be good than dwell on something that happened 5 years ago. And Correa is really good, and he's in his prime. So, yeah. And then you one more point, you say not to mention how expensive he would be. Looking at what Bogaerts and Turner got, I think Correa is going to be looking for 37 plus average annual value. I don't know where you're getting that either, because Correa or Bogaerts and Turner got in the high 20s, mid to high 20s. And so Correa is not going to get 37 if it's over a similar duration. He'd probably get in the same range, mid to high 20s over 11 or 12 years. And yeah, at the end of an 11 or 12 year deal, you might be hurting a little bit about that contract, but you're getting ages 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. That's like 5 years where you're getting kind of prime player. And I think that it's worth living with the back end to get the prime in the short term and get the ball rolling with some more talent on this roster that might invite other players to want to come play here. A lot of guys love Correa, and so I view it really differently than a lot of your points. Israel M, I can't pronounce the last name there, says, at this point, Ben, why should we even try to sign Correa? No way we can compete in the NL. I would just say focus on building the farm system. It's going to be a sad 10 years. This is hyperbole. Like, again, I often remind people, did you have them competing in 2021 because they not only competed but won 107 games and won the division? And so that's not to say expect miracles, but it is to say don't be so sure of ourselves when we're making these claims, because nobody had them doing what they did in 2021, and they did it anyway. And so, but also, why even sign Correa? Because he's good, and it just costs money, and it's not your money or my money. It's Giants ownership's money, and so there's no downside to spending money on it. I mean, the downside would be maybe the back end of a contract, but who cares at this point? They just need some good players, and he really is a good player. I think he's underrated. I didn't realize he was so underrated until so many of the comments I've received over the last several weeks about him are acting like he's just not that good, but he really, truly is that good. There are durability concerns, but he's been fully healthy basically for like 3 seasons, counting 2020, which wasn't a full season. Maybe he wouldn't have been healthy the whole time, but prior to 2020, he had a lot of injuries, including a back injury, chronic at the time, not anymore, I guess, but back injuries. I think Pete Patella was part of helping him get onto a routine that helped him stay healthy. And so Pete Patella, now the Giants general manager, perhaps selling him on his ability to help him stay healthy throughout his career. I don't know. That's just speculation. But you can just focus on building the farm system. There's no reason just signing Correa you couldn't also continue to focus on building the farm system. He just simply would make the Giants better now and for many years to come. And it's hard for me to see that as a bad thing. Neela says, is Carlos Correa really that good? He is. He really is. He's one of the better players in the game. We've got these preliminary Zips projections, and the projection for Correa, according to Zips, which is done by Dan Zimborski, and they get featured on Fangraphs. They're one of the most respected projection systems in the game. They had him at like 5.6 wins above replacement, which is just really, really good. And if you look at the like 80th percentile outcome, it was like 7 wins above replacement, and the 20th percentile outcome, it was 4, and the OPS plus 130, right in line with his career norm. So you're going to get about 30% above average offense out of a shortstop. And another point that was asked earlier was that he's a bad defender. You're looking at one season. He was not good by some metrics in 2022, but prior to that, he was one of the best in the game. And so defensive metrics are not best taken in one season samples. There was a decline in speed, which was a little bit odd given that he played last year as age, 27 all season. A little odd to slow down like he did. Maybe being careful not to hurt himself going into a contract year when he's going to get maybe $300+ million. And so that we do sometimes see that players being careful with their bodies going into a contract off season. But I would not say he's a bad defender. I think he had a bad year, perhaps, but overall should be a good defender and has a good arm. And yeah, he's just a really good player, no doubt to me, if he can stay healthy, and he's young, and he should continue to be good for years to come. Steve says, what do you think about Will Clark's take on Carlos Correa and a 10-year contract? So for those who missed it, Will Clark said that he doesn't think the Giants should sign Correa because he doesn't think you should give out contracts longer than 5 years, essentially. And my take on that is that you're not going to get good players if you have that mindset. And he's worried about the back end of a deal, and I understand that, but if you give him like Turner and Bogarts got in the mid to high 20s in terms of per year salary, by the time 8-9 years have come around, that's worth a lot less than it is in today's dollars, and it's a manageable amount that you can just kind of live with if the rest of your roster is pretty good and you have a farm system that's churning out talent, which continues to be critical. Like none of this is sustainable unless you have a farm system that's churning out talent consistently. And so far that hasn't happened, but I think it may very well start in 2023 as they have a couple of really intriguing prospects who are like on the doorstep of the majors, including an arm in the rotation, which I meant to mention with Manaea, is that keep in mind, they're projecting Kyle Harrison like into this rotation pretty early in the season, it seems like. And so it depends on how they view Harrison, but I'm pretty sure they view him quite highly. And so that's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about all of this. So coming up in just a minute, we've got a specific contract proposal for Carlos Correa over 12 years. And I'm going to tell you whether or not I think they should do it. And we'll get into some trade scenarios as well. Rafael Devers and Ramón Laureano. So we'll get to those questions in just a minute. But before we do, at Locked On Giants, we believe the home should be where you and your family feel the safest, especially over the holidays when package theft is a major thing going on, especially San Francisco, that happens a lot. And this season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, SimpliSafe. And right now, SimpliSafe is offering Locked On Giants listeners 40% off their new security system. Don't put this off, or just any new security system for that matter. Don't put this off. I use it and I love it myself, with an easy-to-use app and being able to check in on crystal clear HD cameras, run it back in case anything happens, like somebody runs up and tries to steal a package from you. And also, they've got this Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe that captures critical evidence and verifies a threat is real, so you get priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Okay, as promised, we are going to continue to get to some questions. The next one coming from Manny, who says, do you think a 12-year, $360 million deal for Correa sounds like an overpay or just about right? It comes out to an AAV of $30 million a year. I truly believe we need to sign him. It sounds like an overpay, especially when we look at what Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts got. Like I said, Xander Bogaerts got what, 280 over 11 years, which comes out to 25.5 million per year. Not exactly, 25.45 million per year. And Trey Turner got 300 million over 11 years, which comes out to 27.27. And so when you add an extra year and you drive up the AAV by nearly 3 million, it does sound a little bit like an overpay, but that might be what it takes for the Giants to actually get the player they want. Is he the player they want? I think so, but we don't know. They've been extremely tight-lipped. So any kind of rumors about them coming, there's just very little that is leaking about what the Giants are doing. Did you hear anything really concrete about Mitch Haniger before it just happened? Did you hear anything really concrete? We did have Susan Slusser saying Sean Manaea, they were interested in him, and boom, a deal is done. And so that's the type of thing. We just don't exactly know what's going on behind closed doors there. But it sounds like an overpay. I think they would prefer to not go that long, even if it means having a higher average annual value. If they could get it at 8 years, but 30, I don't know. The problem is that he can get more money by going longer, and even if the AAV is lower. Even if you do 34 million a year times 8 years, it's only 272. And so it just doesn't work out where he comes out better off. And some people say, well, he could reach free agency and make up for it. Not after 8 years when he's going to be, 36 or whatever. And so you might have to do something like this. And I do think that it would be worth it. There's going to be more questions about the Giants' aggressiveness. So I'll address this a little more, but something like that might be what it takes from the Giants. I would expect it ends up for him a little bit lower than that, but not too much. So next question from BL, who says, do they have enough talent to try a trade with Boston for Rafael Devers? Not a 1-year rental, only if he'd agree to an extension. I want to address this now. I've seen a lot of people saying they don't have the prospects to get Rafael Devers or Shohei Ohtani. I don't know where that's coming from. In fact, I think I know where that's coming from. It's from the Juan Soto thing. But Juan Soto was the exception of all exceptions because of he not only just the player. I think in trade conversations, we're often thinking about just the name of the player coming back and the talent of the player coming back. But yes, it has to do with that. But it also, maybe even more so, has to do with what kind of club control / contract are you inheriting. With Soto, it was 3 postseason runs, 2.5 years of arbitration eligibility for Soto. Whereas with Devers, it's not only is he not as good as Soto, but he's also an impending free agent. He's only got 1 year left. And so absolutely 100%, no doubt in my mind, they definitely have what it would take to get Devers. The question is, do they want to give it up? And what exactly would Boston accept? Boston, by the way, speak of fan negativity, it's even worse in Boston right now. And so I'm not so sure that they're in a position where they want to trade Devers or that they will. But if they can't extend him, they probably should explore trading him. And the same is true with Ohtani. But they have said they're not trading Shohei Ohtani. But the Nationals said the same thing with Juan Soto, and then they did. And so we'll see. But they 100% have what it would take. That's just not a question at all, simply because Ohtani and Devers have only 1 year of team control remaining. And only if he'd agreed to an extension. Yeah, I mean, he's a good young player. Does have, hasn't been great defensively in his career, and also has pretty huge platoon splits, which I didn't know until I kind of did a deeper dive on him. And that would give me pause a little bit about giving up top talent and giving out $300 million. Is he really the guy you want to do it for? Maybe, but maybe not. Joey Bart Season says a trade for Ramón Laureano would fit us nicely. Team control for a few years, amazing defender, and a pretty nice top of the order bat, high energy guy. I think he'll boost morale. So I like Ramón Laureano just fine, but I do think the defensive reputation, we're talking about like 5 years ago. If you look at what has he done in the more recent past, he has been trending downwards, and to the point where the A's even kind of moved him off of center field at times. And I view him as a guy who's kind of fringy in center field at this point. And so just go ahead and look at defensive runs saved, ultimate zone rating, outs above average, and you're not going to be that impressed with what you see from Ramón Laureano. That being said, like if they do, Kevin Kiermaier signed with the Blue Jays, Brandon Nimmo's off the board, obviously Aaron Judge is off the board. And so if they're trying to upgrade the center field defense, what are they going to do? I'm not sure it's Laureano if you look at kind of the trends defensively with him, but would he be a fine addition to this team? Sure, and it wouldn't cost you that much in terms of prospect capital, and he does have that team control that is valuable. So we'll see, but not my number one target, but it would make a lot of sense. Richie Rich, do you believe the Giants need to be more aggressive in signing free agents, i.e. Correa and Rodon? Correa, yes. Rodon, I'm not so sure, simply because, like I said, 7 or 8 years. Should have been more aggressive maybe with Gausman last offseason and with position players last offseason. I have said repeatedly, I thought they made a mistake by not signing these top players last offseason. Carlos Correa was out there. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, I already said Correa, a lot of good players were out there, and they didn't really come away with anyone on the position player side. Yes, they've been too careful, I think. It's time to make a big swing. And let's remember, I feel like we're forgetting when I'm a lot of questions about how cheap the Giants are, about how they're not willing to spend, how they're not aggressive or whatever. But they literally just a week ago had an offer on the table to Aaron Judge that would have been the largest contract in Major League Baseball history for free agent contract, and the highest AAV, average annual value, for a position player in the history of the game. At $40 million a year over 9 years, $360 million, huge number that Judge took to the Yankees and they matched, and that was the deal that got it done. And there's also been a lot of speculation that the Giants may have been willing to go higher, but they didn't get a chance. He just took it to the Yankees and sealed the deal before the Giants had a chance to offer even more. But they had the best offer until the Yankees matched it. And so that's pretty aggressive. It's just, and again, it's December 12th, and so we don't know. Maybe they end up doing something super aggressive with Correa. Maybe they do bring back Rodon. I wouldn't put money. I think Correa is more likely, but we'll see. Generally speaking, they have if you're handing out overall analysis of how this front office has acted, it's the main criticism I would have is lack of aggression and too much being passive and careful. Next question from Jacob. How do you think this quote relates to Farhan Zaidi and the Giants offseason? From Andrew Friedman, the Dodgers president of baseball operations. Quote, if you're always rational about every free agent, you will finish third on every free agent, end quote. Yeah, I mean, it's a well-known quote, and I'm not sure that the Giants are surprised by this. They understand that this is how it works. Farhan Zaidi himself at the GM meetings basically said free agency is highly competitive, especially at the top. And what did he say? I'm like blanking on what he said. He basically said, even if you think you have a good shot to get a guy, you're probably not going to get him. And if you don't think you have a shot to get him, if you don't think it's likely you're going to get a guy, you're definitely not going to get him. So they know this. But this is, again, a question that I'm going to turn back and say, what did they just do with Aaron Judge? It wasn't rational at all. I think $40 million a year through his age 39 season is not rational for a guy his size, and there were concerns and all that, and they put what was the best offer on the table. I'm going to keep saying this. Reports that the Padres offered $400 million are false. There is reporting that they were like considering it, but they didn't actually do it. And so that doesn't count in my opinion. And also they reportedly wanted to do it over like 14 years to lower the average annual value, which MLB would have disallowed because it was like a ploy to, yes, it's 400 million, but it's just a way to keep the annual salaries low. Like Giants might offer a 100-year contract at $1 billion, but it's like they barely pay anything every year, and the league wouldn't allow that. So anyway, they know it. And we'll see what happens with Correa, because I think it really applies to Correa, because unlike Judge, who had this tie to New York and this, pinstripes and legacy and all that, Correa is more just like, he doesn't have that. And so it's going to be about money. And are you that team that gets a little irrational? And it's still possible, as he is still unsigned. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like the show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. Helps me out a lot, so thanks in advance. And thank you to everyone who's done so already. Coming up throughout the rest of the week, we've got a lot more questions to get to, so we'll be doing that as well as talking about anything that happens with the Giants moving forward. So thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.